It is 10:02. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. The AFC won the Pro Bowl in Las Vegas on Sunday, 41-35 over the NFC, with Titans head coach Mike Vrabel on the sideline. Titans safety Kevin Byard notched an early interception, and outside linebacker Harold Landry registered 5 tackles. Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert and Raiders defensive end Max Crosby were the MVPs. After the game, New Orleans Saints running back and VFL Alvin Kamara was arrested on a battery charge in Vegas after being accused of injuring someone at a nightclub on Saturday night. The final open head coaching jobs in the NFL are filling up. The Miami Dolphins have hired San Francisco offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel. The 38-year-old has been on Kyle Shanahan's 49ers staff since 2017. Meanwhile, the Houston Texans in talks with Lovie Smith to become their next head coach. According to a report by Adam Schefter, Smith spent the 2021 season as the Texans' associate head coach and defensive coordinator under David Culley. College basketball, the 7th-ranked Lady Vols lost their second straight at 10th-ranked UConn in a rout, falling 75-56. Jordan Horston with 26 points and 8 rebounds as the Lady Vols fall to 19-4. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome in on this Monday. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Happy to be back in the chair with you guys for the next 3 hours. Welcome into the show. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like. You can hang out with me and Lucas Panzica, who's making everything happen behind the scenes. We got a bunch of great guests today and a lot of good stuff to get you ready for Super Bowl 56. But we're always happy to have you involved in the proceedings with your thoughts, questions, comments, opinions throughout the course of today. 615-737-1045, like you heard me say. We are going to talk a lot about this game because, of course, you know that 3HL and myself, we're going out west. Tuesday night will be at Super Bowl 56, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, or rather at Super Bowl Radio Row for Super Bowl 56 in L.A., Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and there's a bunch of great stuff that we got planned for you, some stuff that we're going to have to play fast and loose with because there's going to be people flying around all over the place at Radio Row, and it's going to be exciting because this game is going to be a lot of fun. But as I was in this football-less purgatory this weekend, which, you know, for somebody who works in this, kind of nice to have a weekend where you're not dedicated to watching anything specifically, where there's not a 16-hour workday involved, but you don't care about that. And that's okay. You don't got to. What you do care about is that sinking feeling every year in the week before the Super Bowl, where only the Pro Bowl resides, and you got Pebble Beach, and you got basketball you can watch if you like. But I had a little bit of sports depression this weekend. Honestly, I did. Because I just want more football in my life, even though we've been enveloped by this thing for basically the better part of 9 months. I'm not ready to let it go yet, and the Pro Bowl is always just a brutal reminder of how close we are to losing football or NFL football in our lives.
I was going to say, still got football coming.
No, there's football coming, all right? There's going to be, listen, we got all the football for you this week. I promise you. Still football coming, and like I said, a legitimately exciting game. Lovable losers, longtime lovable losers, Bengals, Rams. We've got storylines all over the place. There will be time for that. But what I was laughing at more, because we put it on a poll at Buck Reising, is where you can vote on the polls, and I'm curious to know how the callers feel about this as well. What did you spend more time watching this weekend? Between the golf, you had the Pro Bowl. You had, what were the options that we gave everybody, Lucas? Golf, Pro Bowl.
Hoops. And Olympics.
And the Olympics. Is it sad that Olympics is the furthest from my brain right now?
There's been a very low amount of buzz.
I have zero interest in that. And I feel like there's some kind of, just national obligation to be interested in the Olympics. People spend 4 years of their lives, whichever cycle that you're preparing for, Winter or Summer Olympics, whatever the case may be, but you couldn't get me to turn on the Olympics. Now, it's not even because of the fact that we're holding Olympics in China, which is problematic unto itself. I'm not outright boycotting watching the Olympics because they're holding it in a place where there is some more than questionable behavior going on, and you hear the way that people talk about certain topics in China while broadcasting the Olympics in China, and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Not even that. It's not even because of moral objections to the Olympics this year. I don't care. And I don't know if anybody else felt that way this weekend, where the thing that you spent your most time on was the biggest waste of time of any of it, which was, of course, the Pro Bowl. I was laughing watching the dialogue on social media around the Pro Bowl because clearly people were watching, and maybe my timeline's a bit of an echo chamber because I work in football. Most of the people who I follow work in football, and so we're talking about the one thing in football that's relevant yesterday. But Deion Sanders, who's sitting on his couch somewhere watching the Pro Bowl on Sunday, and he tweets out, "Lord help me. I'm watching the Pro Bowl, and I remember when we were so proud and appreciative of that accolade. We went to Hawaii to prove we were more than worthy, so we competed at practice and in the game. I wanted you to know that prime was prime. What happened and when?" We're having Deion Sanders have an existential crisis about the damn Pro Bowl on your timelines right now. This is something that matters even in the least bit. What does Deion want them to do? Why are people watching the Pro Bowl not understanding what exactly that they are signing up for and how much of their time they're going to be willing to commit to this, and then getting on social media and complaining about, they're not even tackling? Of course not. What do you think this is? They're playing dodgeball the day before. Mike Vrabel's the only one who's out there scheming up coverage disguises to get Kyler Murray to throw an interception that ends up being a Darius Leonard pick six that nobody wants to tackle him on, so he scores a touchdown. What is this? What is this clamoring for highly competitive football in the Pro Bowl?
I don't remember it ever being that way. I know we're young, but
it's
always looked like that to me.
We're a bit of a prisoner in the moment because we never saw Deion Sanders play in a Pro Bowl, right? So sure, maybe at one time it was hugely competitive or whatever, because the Pro Bowl used to be after the Super Bowl. That much I know. In my entire life, the Pro Bowl has always been, this is not the case for the vast majority of people, but in my entire life, the Pro Bowl has been always the week before the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl, if you want to be highly competitive about it, I still think that's dumb because you guys got going into free agency and you don't want to get hurt because you're out there screwing around in Hawaii and you want to, show, quote, that prime was prime. Prime ain't out there tackling in a Pro Bowl either. He wasn't tackling in real games. What's he talking about? The outrage around the lack of competitiveness in the Pro Bowl is always so confusing to me. But we can put it behind us. It's done. It's over with. There's real football on the horizon. But more importantly, as we get you ready for Super Bowl 56, there is some legitimate local news about the Tennessee Titans that we had break in the middle of our show on Friday, and not really a whole lot of time to discuss. I think we spent maybe 2 or 3 minutes on Tim Kelly being hired on the Tennessee Titans coaching staff as the passing game coordinator before we had to wrap up for the day. So what we're going to do throughout the course of today is talk about where this is going to help them the most. Dave Lapham, who's the Bengals color analyst on Bengals radio, he'll join us as well, and we'll talk about Super Bowl 56 throughout the course of the day. But basically, the question that I want to know from you, given the fact that we really haven't had much dialogue about Tim Kelly just yet, is where do you expect him to help the most on offense? Again, his title officially is passing game coordinator, so you understand that it's probably going to be involved in the passing game. Remember that, of course, Todd Downing is still the offensive coordinator, but understanding what we do about Tim Kelly, his career in the NFL as an offensive coordinator, his career in Houston as an offensive coordinator, understanding that their offense was an unholy mess in 2021, but look at their roster, and I think you can understand a little bit more of why with proper context. So where do you expect Tim Kelly to help the Tennessee Titans the most in 2022. And if this is the move, right? If this is what they do, if it's not Aaron Rodgers, it's not Devontae Adams because Aaron Rodgers is moving to Tennessee. It's not any of these like super salacious sex appeal offseason moves. It's a passing game coordinator, right? If this is the move, is that good enough for you? 615-737-1045. We'll talk about it coming up next. Dennis Kelly, by the way, the brother of Tim, or maybe Tim is the brother of Dennis. Dennis Kelly, former Titans right tackle, will join us at 12:20. We'll talk about what his brother's doing here in Tennessee. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back on this Monday, Super Bowl week. We got a lot of local stuff, though, to talk about before we head on out to L.A. and begin a full preview of the Bengals and the Rams. We're going to have a lot of great guests out there on Radio Row. I'm excited to go. I'm excited to who do you think is going to be more trouble in Los Angeles? I mean, this is probably, maybe this is a poll when we get out there on Wednesday. I don't know who's going to be the biggest, who's going to cause the most problems. And there's a variety of reasons. Like, I'm not saying cause the most problems, have the most fun. Like, you can lump all of this in together. But I think between Brent's probably the safest of the four of us who are going to go, because it's me and 3HL for basically 4 days in L.A. Brent's probably the safest, right? We can all agree that. I'm probably second as far as least problematic or going to get into the least amount of trouble, because I'm 28, but I'm basically 110, and it's going to be a work week for me because I'm going to do all the availabilities. There's some stuff to get into out there, but, not go crazy. I think that it's Dawn and Slay for different reasons. I think, have the potential to cause the most problems in Los Angeles when we get out there. I don't know how that's going to go.
Those reasons sound very different. So what reasons do you have?
Well, listen.
Like, why is Dawn in there? Slay, it's obvious.
Dawn, just because she's generally confrontational. Like, just generally And listen, LA is a lot more restrictive than things here in Nashville. And I'm not alleging anything. All I would say is that of the four of us, Dawn is by far the most confrontational. So I think that Dawn has the potential to cause some problems in LA. I also think that we may just lose Slay for a day. I
was gonna say I don't think Dawn's gonna cause too many problems. Slay is the guy. Slay's the guy you got to keep your eye on.
I think you are vastly underrating the amount of headaches that Dawn Davenport can cause people if things are not the way that Dawn needs them. And listen, I identify with that. It's probably the thing that me and Dawn have the most in common, outside of sports opinions, because clearly we disagree. We have time to talk about that. We'll keep you updated from Los Angeles this week. But we're talking about Tim Kelly. That's the biggest local news.
Dawn just texted us.
Yeah, did she?
I was waiting for it. She said, Brent is not the safest.
Yeah, but again, on a scale of the four of us.
That's what he wants us to think.
Like, Brent's got everybody fooled. Brent's just, we can get into this once we all get out there, because I'm sure we're going to go out to dinner. Slay's trying to go to a Lakers game. I don't want to go because the Lakers are wretched. Like, it's just that's the last thing that I want to spend time doing is watch.
Are they playing anyone fun?
I need to look at the schedule, but I know what Russell Westbrook is at this point in his career. I don't want to watch that.
It's so funny now seeing when he gets the ball, the entire crowd around where he's holding the ball. No, don't shoot it.
That's what I'm saying.
He bricks it off the backboard.
He is just the worst as far as enjoying a game of basketball. Like, Lakers fans have to hate that guy. So I don't want to pay money to go watch Russell Westbrook brick things.
I don't even think they're home this week.
Aren't they? Okay, then good. Bullet dodged. We don't have to worry about these things. Let me talk about Tim Kelly before we get too far down the rabbit hole. So, as you know, Friday in the middle of the show, or if you weren't listening, this happened in the middle of our show, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN first reported that the Titans had, at the time, intended, at that point of his reporting, nothing confirmed or nothing official at the time, but Jeremy Fowler had put it out there that the Titans had planned to hire former Texans offensive coordinator Tim Kelly. Now, that was something that we were able to confirm while we were on the air. In fact, the brother of Tim, Dennis Kelly, former, better known as the Titans' former right tackle, will join us later on in the show, and we'll talk about why Tim is going to be such a good fit here. But this is kind of the thing that I'm most curious about, right? It's not Aaron Rodgers. It's not as much fun to talk about Aaron Rodgers in two-tone blue as it is to say, oh, well, look at this. They had some struggles from a creativity standpoint in the passing game. So what did they do to rectify the situation? They went and hired a guy who's a really, really qualified offensive coordinator to now come in and work under Todd Downing as a part of his staff. Also of note, the fact that Mike Vrabel had previously wanted to interview Tim Kelly for the offensive coordinator position when Arthur Smith left. They ultimately ended up promoting Todd Downing internally, but you remember at the time that the Houston Texans did block that interview request. They didn't want Tim Kelly to leave and go to Tennessee and then make them suffer twice a year with a much more talented offense at the time. And in part, that was blocked because at the time, before Deshaun Watson became hugely problematic, he was having a great amount of success under Tim Kelly. Now, from the standpoint of their record in Tim's final year Deshaun Watson was playing for them in 2020. They were wretched in 2020. They won 4 games. The roster was a mess. Bill O'Brien had sold everything off for parts. He got fired into that season. Tim Kelly was retained on the staff and was even retained under David Culley because the problem was not their inability or their ability to move the ball. The problem was their roster was completely and totally trash on the offensive line. They couldn't rush the passer. J.J. Watt was a shell of himself by that point, and then ultimately released to go and join the Arizona Cardinals this season. But Tim Kelly and Deshaun Watson had a lot of success together. He was there and hired in 2014. He has been in Houston, surviving now a couple of coaching staffs, primarily Bill O'Brien, and they did work together, he and Mike Vrabel, from 2014 until 2017, when Mike, which was Mike's last season with the Houston Texans before he was hired in January of 2018 to come be the head coach here. So we all know this, but the question that I have for you is this enough? Like, if you know that the bulk of your offensive line, notwithstanding, we'll see how things kind of play out there, is Tim Kelly enough for you this offseason to say, okay, they understand that there were problems with the offense, not just in that one game, but throughout the course of the season, right? Everybody knew what the Titans were going to do. And the teams that were able to game plan for that efficiently were able to stop them, cause them problems, create turnovers, cause the Titans to struggle. They remained in those games, so there's parts of the game plan that clearly worked, right? Even in the loss to Houston or in the loss to New England, the loss to Pittsburgh, like they're in the games. But, I mean, really, the only one that they got their doors blown off of where they were just not competitive was the start of the season against Arizona. Patriots, the box score got away from them at the end, but I think everybody understood that they had the opportunity, turnovers notwithstanding, to still win that football game. So now they bring in Tim Kelly. And my question to you, 615-737-1045, is it enough? If this is your Aaron Rodgers of the offseason, and again, it's not nearly as inflammatory as the idea of Aaron Rodgers, but it's far more realistic. If this is something that the Titans do and say they draft offensive line, they try and get a future replacement for Julio Jones because, of course, he's getting up there in age, his body not quite what it needs to be for him to be able to consistently produce over the course of a season. So you need help. You need a tight end. Like, there's things that are going to look different. But for the most part, if the most impactful thing that you add this offseason is a passing game coordinator, is that good enough for you to be like, all right, they've heard our complaints, whether it be me or you listening, wherever it is that you're listening, about how that looked at the end of the season, and understanding that even though they had all their pieces and parts together for the last game of their season, that loss against Cincinnati, that they had basically done the same thing all year long. We thought that they were offensively limited because of personnel. There's some truth to that. But also, when you talk about the Titans' passing game structure, and we've heard a lot of smart football people say this, they were being limited by play design. So it can be, to a degree, injuries all over the place, but also they had some flaws that teams were able to exploit that game planned for them properly. 615-737-1045. Now, before Deshaun Watson became hugely problematic, he was giving voice to the idea that even though they were terrible in 2020, he wanted Tim Kelly to return as the offensive coordinator because Deshaun Watson understands that this guy knows how to maximize his ability. This was Deshaun Watson at the end of their season after losing to the Tennessee Titans.
Most definitely. I mean, Tim, over the past 2 years, have really taken my game to a whole nother level. As far as just knowledge, reading defenses, understanding run points and run schemes, understanding, the way of, different concepts and different situations. So his knowledge of just the game of football is very, very bright. And, he really helped me take my game, especially this year, the best football I've played in my career.
So that's Deshaun Watson, again, before when Deshaun Watson was still able to be quoted reputably for things. Since then, a little different now. But he's correct as far as what they were able to do offensively. Now, in 2020, at the end of that season, Houston was middle of the pack as far as most offensive metrics were concerned. You look at what they were able to do as far as scoring. They were tied for 18th with the LA Chargers. They were averaging 24 points per game flat. Now, we know that the Tennessee Titans were up there as well. In fact, they were the fourth best offense in football, behind only Green Bay, Tampa, Buffalo at the time, 29.6 points per game with Arthur in his last year. But again, I remind you, Deshaun Watson was playing behind an atrocious offensive line. They had actually improved their points per game total from 19 to 20, even though their record was substantially worse. The yards per attempt is something that you look at as far as, all right, how often are they trying to keep passing defenses honest? How often are they testing them down the field? And this was something that Houston did with a fair amount of regularity. In 2019, when he first became the offensive coordinator, 7.7 yards per attempt. So they were getting after it down the field. You look at 2020 rather, and see the way that they were managing their offensive passing game. They were still up near the top. In fact, they were the best team in football as far as yards per attempt were concerned, 8.9 yards per attempt. So they're getting big chunk passing plays down the field. Now, we understand that did not necessarily translate to wins. Again, you don't have a defense that can get you any kind of stops. You're not going to be any good. You don't have an offensive line that can't pass protect for your quarterback. It's going to fall off a cliff. And in 2021, they did struggle, understandably, because you go from Deshaun Watson, who is, we all get as a football player, high-level talent, high-level quarterback. You go from that to the combination of Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills, and you drop down to 6.6 yards per attempt, good for 25th in the NFL, because you don't trust their ability to get the ball down the field efficiently. They didn't throw deep passes to beat the Titans. They weren't bombing the Tennessee defense down the field when they beat Tennessee here in Nashville. In fact, I think their longest pass completion was one of those quick pop passes where the wide receiver runs in front of the quarterback and it's just basically a chest pass to the wide receiver. Like, they're not doing anything crazy. They're finding ways to win or to produce offense with their personnel limitations. They were at the bottom of the league as far as points per game were concerned. Again, to judge Tim Kelly as an OC last season is to do so understanding that they were going to be in a tough spot. But for all of the things that we get about where the Titans lack the most right now, Todd Downing was receiving criticism, a lot of criticism, still receiving criticism after the divisional round loss to the Bengals, because that offense only put together 16 points and turned the ball over 3 times. And what it shows you about the head coach is that, like, at a certain point, cost starts to become a thing, even though there's not a salary cap for coaching staffs. You understand that you're still asking your ownership, the people who are going to have to be responsible for paying these salaries, you're having to go now twice to Amy Adams Strunk and say, our defensive coordinator in 2020 was not good enough. One, I need the green light to spend this money in free agency to upgrade our personnel. 2, I need the money to hire an assistant coach who is going to be here as a senior defensive assistant, who has been a former NFL head coach, who has been here in Tennessee for a decade as a defensive coordinator. I need money to pay Jim Schwartz to help supplement my defensive staff. I am confident that it is going to pay dividends. And what did it do? We don't know truly the impact of adding Schwartz and how much of a percentage, or if you're looking at a pie chart, how much of a slice is going to the presence of Jim Schwartz, how much of that is going to the increased personnel, how much is going to the fact that Shane Bowen was legitimately the defensive coordinator, not a part-time linebacker coach, not restricted by the amount of meetings that he could attend because he has a position group unto himself, but also he's got to call the plays. So how much of that to legitimately assign credit or blame to, difficult to know without physically being in the building and being in the meeting rooms and discerning that impact. But again, now you've got to go back to your owner and you've got to say, at this point, our offense wasn't good enough. We think there's the ability to add a member to this staff to improve this. It's not unprecedented. There's plenty of offenses in the NFL who have passing game coordinators. Just Tennessee hasn't been one. So how can we improve our offense while retaining a coach who we believe internally, and however you feel about it externally, they internally believe Todd Downing to be a good coach. Mike Vrabel has given voice to that. The players have given voice to that. John Robinson has given voice to that in multiple interviews at this point in the offseason. We believe Todd to be good, but we think that he needs some help. Can we have the money to pay the salary for a passing game coordinator, a former OC, to come in here and bolster our staff? And again, they got the green light. There's a lot of different ways to improve an NFL team. It doesn't just come down to, all right, do your draft picks succeed? Do you spend the money efficiently in free agency? It doesn't just come down to roster construction. We all know this. You have to have competency from ownership on down. But again, in two parts, it shows Mike Vrabel's willingness to ask for help, even though he's not doing it publicly with us and staying entrenched in his positions when you hear him speak at press conferences and things of that nature. It doesn't matter what he says to us as long as he does the things necessary to improve the football team. This is a clear and obvious improvement to the football team. It's creating a position that previously on this staff didn't exist. Are we spreading our people too thin? Okay, if that's so, how do we make this more efficient? How do we diversify our play portfolio while keeping something in place that we think works really well? We think that Todd Downing gets us. And that's basically the mantra at this point, for lack of a better term, or the conversations internally that are happening about this. They believe Todd is a good OC. They think that they can improve upon what Todd has been able to do so far. So where you're looking at Todd Downing's weaknesses in an OC and you're looking at numbers from Oakland and you see that staff got fired, you understand there were some things around that situation where they were all getting fired anyway because Mark Davis wanted to hand John Gruden a $100 million check to come be the celebrity coach of the future Las Vegas Raiders, and that Jack Del Rio and Todd Downing, that's not spicy enough. Let me go get Chucky. They were getting fired anyway, but you understand that Todd Downing had some deficiencies. Okay, so just like Ryan Tannehill, the deficiencies are there. There's some stuff that works. How do we mitigate our issues, improve upon what we think works already, and kind of take away some of the things that caused us problems in the offseason, or in the regular season? Is it a perfect solution? No, there'll probably be some kinks, probably be some new stuff, some things to iron out. It's not going to look completely different by the time 2022's regular season rolls around. That's not my expectation at all. But should you see some wrinkles, some legitimate effect of what it is to have another voice in the room, another offensive mind who's understanding where you were not able to exploit defenses last year to your detriment? Of course it is. This Tim Kelly hire is probably going to be the move of the offseason. I'm not saying that they won't sign free agents. I'm not saying that they won't draft a tight end who's going to be your starter, or whatever the case may be. But if you're talking about impact and of legitimate consequence, I don't know that you need to do a whole lot more than Tim Kelly at this point, other than, get ready for what your offensive line is going to look like in 2022. When we come back, we're going to talk about the coaching hirings happening around the rest of the league, because at this point, Only 2 jobs of the 10 that came open in the offseason are available. 2 jobs remain, and 1 sounds like it's getting ready to make a hire in the AFC South. We'll tell you what's going on with the Houston Texans and why it should matter to you coming up next. Welcome back on this Monday. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock, 615-737-1045. You can jump in on the conversation this Super Bowl week. Looking forward to heading out to L.A. This is the second time. Well, I guess it's not the second time in a calendar year that I'll be in Los Angeles, but Titans at SoFi on Sunday Night Football, a result that was very, very beneficial to them. I'm looking forward to seeing how much different L.A. feels and responds when that's the kind of game, the scale of game in town. We're going to talk about the biggest Super Bowl headlines coming up next, and Dave Lapham, who will be on the call of the Bengals and the Chargers for the Bengals radio network. He will join us at 11:20. Dennis Kelly at 12:20, former Titans right tackle as well. But since we were talking about a former Houston Texans staffer, an OC that's now joining the Titans staff, he was fired on the same day, Tim Kelly was, as David Culley, who was a one-and-done, got the bag, $22 million, to be the fall guy for how bad the Houston Texans were going to be this past season. And so now, after a month, we're a month removed from the NFL's regular season for most teams ending at this point. And a month after the Houston Texans fired David Culley, they now seem to be closing in on their head coaching candidate. Remember that 8 of the 10 jobs are filled, that one of them has gone to a minority candidate who is Mike McDaniel. You would not know that to look at him, but he is of mixed descent and does consider himself biracial. So he is going to, if Mike McDaniel is the person who bails the NFL hiring practices out this year, I think it's going to be pretty funny. But now you're down to the Houston Texans and the New Orleans Saints, 2 jobs that are still available. Houston Texans were a month removed from this, and they've just kind of blown up their hiring process. They had this thing boiled down to, as of yesterday evening, Josh McCown, who represents the exact thing that Brian Flores is literally suing the league over. He's never coached a day in the NFL. He's coached 2 years of high school football. He has called plays in 0 of those 2 high school football seasons. All of a sudden, Houston Texans head coach. By the way, he was interviewed for a head coaching job last year, too. I think it was the Jets. Either way.
Well, he's buddies with Jack Easterby.
Which, who isn't at this point?
Right.
Jack Easterby. Just the mad preacher constantly climbing up the chaos ladder for power.
Great value, Joel Osteen.
You think the mad preacher Jack Easterby would welcome tornado victims or hurricane victims into his church, unlike Joel Osteen?
Not a chance.
Wasn't that a thing? You think they're both shutting their doors?
Well, Osteen caved eventually.
Well, yeah, because it got out that he wasn't letting people in. It just anyway. I don't want to get into that. I'm going to come after people's. Maybe people like Joel Osteen. I don't know. But you've got Jack Easterby now and Nick Caserio, who a month into their hiring process have blown up their own coaching search and said, you know what? Block's a little hot right now to hire the guy with 0 NFL experience other than he played, apparently, until he was in his 40s. Josh McCown, credit to Josh McCown, hung around the league a long time. By all accounts, has had major impacts on every quarterback that he's been behind. Coaches love him. And I totally get it, right? Totally get it. But if you're going to have this right now, this lawsuit in the middle of the NFL, you can't hire the guy who is the poster boy for everything that you are being sued over, especially when the guy who's still in contention for that job at the time, along with Josh McCown, was Brian Flores. Now, they've said, you know what? Lovie Smith's been on our staff, even though we're waiting until a month removed from our head coaching position to be available. Maybe now's the time to internally interview somebody on our staff. Turns out Lovie Smith is the guy who's in the lead to get this job. Does this not feel like Fall Guy 2.0? This is what it takes for Lovie Smith to get another crack. Successful NFL head coach. I know things petered out in Chicago over the course of him and Cutler's marriage together, basically. But Lovie Smith, who has had success in the NFL, as a head coach. Terrible in college. Now comes back to the league as a defensive coordinator in Houston. Defense plays pretty well over the course of that. Lovie Smith, now he's getting another crack at the head coaching thing because they can't hire Brian Flores. Nobody can. Brian Flores, whether you think that his cause is just or not, by the way, it is a just cause, what he's doing, even if I think the legal ground that he's put together, unless there's something that comes out in discovery, I don't know that anything in that lawsuit alleges outright or proves outright racism in the NFL's hiring practice, other than you got a bunch of old white men and women who don't necessarily connect with the black candidates they come into interview, so they hire the people that they're more comfortable with. Makes all the sense in the world, right? Everybody's got those kind of just embedded biases that maybe not as outright racism, but you don't think about it because just whatever you're more comfortable with. So now Lovey's the fall guy 2.0. Their roster's not any better. Nick Caserio did not show us an understanding that they were under the gun, and their quarterback is still on the roster with the 4th highest cap hit in football next year, Deshaun Watson. No resolution on that situation. You're just going to saddle Lovey with this again? You're going to saddle another minority candidate with this again and say, yeah, go and fix it until we got, maybe we got a guy who's going to make a little more sense. With all this being said, I don't know who's botched their hiring practices more at this point between the Jags and the Texans. But I feel for Lovie Smith and Jim Caldwell, Steve Wilkes. These guys may be of varying degrees of competency as NFL head coaches, okay? But I feel for these guys who either are being brought in for sham interviews or when you can't find anybody, just like the Texans couldn't last year, who's willing to take your terrible, terrible job, you say, yeah, let's go to the minority candidates. They'll take the job. They'll do this. And then if it doesn't work out, we'll pay them a bunch of money. And David Culley, maybe you've worked your entire life for this opportunity, but we'll give you $22 million. You'll be happy about it. Go on and move on with your life. Thank you for your good service and your ability to somehow pull 4 wins out of that just awful roster. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you'd like. We got Jerry in Nashville who leads us off on this Monday. Good morning, Jerry.
Hey, good morning to you guys.
What you got?
Hey, I just want to say real quick, you guys are doing a great job. I used to not listen because I got tired of it, but since you guys jumped in, it's made it all good. So good job, brother.
I appreciate that.
Listen, if 70%, and you probably heard this before, but if 70% of the league is black, how come people are not suing like Polynesians, whites, or Hispanics that they get, half up the league with the players? Because it's the same situation, bro. If you think about it, I mean, just because somebody is born a certain color, obviously, if you're going to make it fair.
Well, Jerry, and hang with me. Hang with me. I don't mean to cut you off, but it's not the same for the purposes we're talking about the labor force. What the issue is the people who make the decisions. The players don't dictate what happens in the league, right? That comes from the owners on down. We're talking about the people who are in the positions to understand the circumstances, who may better be able to connect with candidates of whatever race, right? We have one minority owner in the NFL in Shad Khan. We have never had an African-American owner in the league. So you're talking about a much larger pool of people who have much less power, whereas you go up the list from general managers and head coaches and ultimately on up to ownership, that is non-existent. You kind of see my point?
I do, and I know it's a sad situation altogether because I do believe that Flores is getting a shaft. I'm a Dolphins fan. I do believe that I would have fired him based on his coaching. I know people argue with that, but nonetheless, it is sad. But, I think it's kind of, to me, if we're pushing, if you can't hire somebody as an employer, whoever you want, because, the best person for the job. I'll tell you, I was going to hire Flores right off the bat, and I would rather have an African-American coach because they can relate to the players better. But that's beside the point. I just think the world's getting really rough when you can't hire and fire. I mean, you go anywhere into any of these businesses around here and see what customer service you get these days. And I think, now everybody's pushing it, I'll sue you and this and that, and it's really killing our society. But nonetheless, I just wanted to ask that question. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for the call, Jerry. Listen, I'm happy to have a discussion about this stuff with you guys, and we'll take more phone calls on this coming up next. We'll also get into the most interesting storylines from Super Bowl 56. But again, if you're going to make the argument that the workforce needs to be more equal and balanced, understand that we're talking about a much different group of people, that the people in power who make all the decisions, who ultimately make the decisions on who plays in the league, they look much different than their workforce. And all everybody is asking in the middle ground between coaches, where we've gone from, in 2011, we had 8 minority head coaches. Now we're down to 2 if you count Mike McDaniel. And Mike McDaniel, absolutely, I'm not discounting Mike McDaniel, but you understand what I'm saying if you followed what's happening in Miami at this point. Robert Saleh as well is in this conversation. So we're down from, we've gone backwards. And clearly the Rooney Rule doesn't do anything but set up minority candidates for sham interviews so owners can ultimately end up hiring whoever the hell they want. More phone calls on this next. Super Bowl storylines as well. Dave Lapham at 11:20. Lot more to go. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:04. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica, and happy Super Bowl week. 104.5 The Zone is going on the road to Radio Row in Los Angeles, thanks to Ferguson HVAC, Two Rivers Ford, and A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Tune in every day as the Buck Reising Show and 3HL will broadcast from L.A. starting on Wednesday. The final open head coaching jobs in the NFL are filling up. The Miami Dolphins have hired San Francisco offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel. The 38-year-old has been on Kyle Shanahan's 49ers staff since 2017, only this past season as the offensive coordinator. Meanwhile, the Houston Texans are in talks with Lovie Smith to become their next head coach. According to multiple reports, Smith spent the 2021 season as the Texans' associate head coach and defensive coordinator under David Culley. The AFC won the Pro Bowl in Vegas on Sunday, 41-35 over the NFC, with Titans head coach Mike Vrabel leading the way on the sideline. After the game, New Orleans Saints running back and VFL Alvin Kamara was arrested on a battery charge in Vegas after being accused of injuring someone at a nightclub on Saturday night. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome back or welcome in. It's already hour number 2 on this Monday. We're rolling right along because it's Super Bowl week and we are excited. We're excited to have you here as well. Lucas Panzica is making it happen. Dave Lapham of the Bengals Radio Network is going to join us coming up next. Talk about this game in a little more detail, and we're taking your phone calls. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like. 615-737-1045 is the number. Now, what we're going to talk about here is the biggest storylines from Super Bowl 56. And there's a lot of spicy ones that I am looking forward to seeing how they play out. But I want to start, before we get to Joe Burrow, before we talk about Matt Stafford having never won a playoff game and now he's rattled off 3 straight en route to winning. Is it 2 or 3? No, it's 3. They played in the wild card weekend.
Yeah, you're right.
Don't what? Help me! look, he's back there throwing up hand signs at me.
Throwing up a 2 with a confused look on my face.
Not productive. 615-737-1045. Yes, he has won 3 playoff games after going, the better part of a decade in the league without winning 1. Now en route to the Super Bowl. A lot of great. The Super Bowl going back to L.A. is so cool. I don't know how many people are NASCAR fans, but to watch them hold a NASCAR race over the weekend in the L.A. Coliseum, I thought was so cool. Now, obviously, this is not going to be played in the Coliseum. This is being played at SoFi Stadium. But to have the Super Bowl back in L.A., there's some interesting storylines around that as well. Because, after 30 years, it's finally going back to the place where they started having these Super Bowls. But that's not the thing that I'm most interested to hear about when is Roger Goodell's press conference? His annual State of the League. Lucas, can you look that up for me? When he gets up in front of, hundreds of national and international media members and he takes questions throughout the course of that. It's a Super Bowl tradition unlike any other. Except this year, it's got one of the most interesting things hanging over it, like a dark cloud, no pun intended, for the league and what they're caught up in the middle of. Because Roger Goodell is going to take the podium, take the stand, for lack of a better term, when in reality it should be the owners, because they're the ones who are controlling this and paying Roger Goodell upwards of $40 million a year to be a human meat shield for them. They are being sued as a league right now by Brian Flores, who's alleging racism in the NFL's hiring practices, who is alleging them of giving $100,000 handshakes to Tank, and who is alleging them of conducting sham interviews to satisfy the Rooney Rule. That is going to be what Roger Goodell stands up there and takes a bunch of questions on. And by Sunday, we will all talk about the Bengals and the Rams, excuse me. We'll all talk about the Bengals and the Rams, and this Super Bowl 56. We'll all, break down the halftime show with much importance and how good or how bad Snoop and Mary J. Blige are, whether Eminem looks like he's with it or not, like all of these things, right? We'll all do that on Sunday. But in the meantime, I want to know, Raj, how do you feel and how do your bosses feel? The 31, Green Bay doesn't count because they're publicly owned, the 31 NFL owners who are trotting you out there for us to throw rocks at because you're the one who has to take the questions. How do you feel about it, Raj? That's the most interesting storyline to me from Super Bowl 56. The NFL wants nothing to do with this on their crown jewel. This is the finale. This is the thing that you get football fans and non-football fans all together. You got 50 million people watching Niners-Rams in the championship game. You're going to blow it out in a major television market like L.A. because you got a home team playing and you got the lovable losing underdogs. Until now, swaggy Joe Burrow walking into L.A. to try and take everybody's stuff. That's what Roger Goodell wants to talk about this week, not about racism in your hiring practices. 615-737-1045. You can join the conversation. Cheryl is in Nashville wanting to chime in on this Monday morning. Good morning, Cheryl.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I just wanted to address the comments you made regarding whether or not, and I won't quote you, Brian Flores' lawsuit will hold water or hold weight or how far it will go. To me, that is in itself a form of an embedded bias because we really don't know how far it'll go. It also speaks to whether or not you are woke regarding what is happening and what has happened. So I will even continue to listen to the Buck Reising Show, and I will call later, and I'll give you the day to think about embedded bias that you may not know that you have. Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
I very much appreciate the call, Cheryl. And I say that not necessarily, and again, I have no legal training, Cheryl, so that I hope you will call back. And the woke term, I'm not necessarily interested in buzzwords, right? Like whether you consider me to be, some people consider me to be way too woke for them or not woke enough. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not here to do the buzzword thing. But I am totally willing to consider my own embedded biases, of course. But the point, I guess, Cheryl, that I want to make is I want to talk about it. Like, help me understand. I very much value people who call in like Cheryl, because I don't know everything, even though I'm the one sitting up in front of here, up in here with my microphone in front of my face and talking for 3 hours a day. I've got blind spots just like everybody else. The point is that unlike the NFL ownership, I feel I'm willing to have those discussions and to be, exposed to different ways of thinking and to have my own ways of thinking exposed if they do indeed need light shown on them. I know that I have plenty of blind spots. I know that there's plenty of things that I don't know, even though it's my job to tell you that I know all the things, right? That's what I do. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like. I just think that this is going to hover over the NFL. And my point about there not necessarily being the basis to prove race, right? The burden of proof is so high. Even as somebody without legal training, we understand this, that it is so difficult to prove these things in a court of law. And my opinion on that, after having read the lawsuit, is that there's a lot of stuff in there that I think is tied together that you're trying to make a lot of noise, even if your cause is just. There are things in there that absolutely deserve to be exposed. And by the way, I know that there is racial trains of thought in the NFL's hiring practices. I'm well aware of this as somebody who works in the NFL. Because when the New York Giants are coming out and saying in their statement that we did not conduct a sham Rooney Rule interview for Brian Flores the day after we had already given or decided that Brian Daboll was going to be the head coach, because they said that they hired the most qualified candidate. Except the most qualified candidate just had back-to-back winning seasons with the Miami Dolphins, a nowhere franchise for the last 20 years. Did it with an owner who was actively trying to pay him money to tank. Put together back-to-back winning seasons for a team that hasn't done that since 2003. That's the most qualified guy. And instead, the thing that sets him off and why he decides to do this on the first day of Black History Month is because he wants to make a statement. He wants this to be loud. And ultimately, though, I think if you don't get to discovery with it, you may have done it too soon. Because I'd almost rather him have waited, even though I understand the impact of doing it on the first day of Black History Month. I also understand that he's still a candidate for these jobs. And if he does it while he's still in the running for two of these jobs, the Texans, theoretically, and the Saints, then he's suing the league while trying to get the league to employ him. And he's done himself a disservice in that regard, even if he is so pissed off for the right reasons that he wants it out there and done right now. And he's going on CBS this morning to talk about it. 615-737-1045. We'll take more of your phone calls. Coming up next, Dave Lapham, the Bengals radio analyst, is going to join us to start our Super Bowl 56 coverage, and we'll start to talk about football because I know that's what most people are here for. But, I mean, what does it tell you that I'd rather talk about race in sports than do the whole, should Aaron Rodgers be the Titans quarterback this year, the offseason? Dave Lapham next. Welcome back on this Monday. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. We're having a fun show so far. Dave Lapham of the Bengals Radio Network will join us momentarily, and we'll get into a conversation about Joey B out there swagging all over the place in Super Bowl 56. He's got the Bengals, who have no business being in these conversations, in the big game, the final game in Los Angeles. Just under a week from now. 615-737-1045, though. We've been talking about the biggest storylines in Super Bowl 56. By the way, I want to know what your biggest storylines are, because mine is this lawsuit that Roger Goodell is going to have to get up and take punches over when all he wants to do is talk about, how much money this is bringing in for the city of Los Angeles and how much good the NFL is doing. Raj doesn't want to talk about racism and lawsuits. But that's the most interesting storyline to me. If you have one that's more football related, I'd love to hear it. 615-737-1045. We got Max in Nashville who wants to weigh in. Hello, Max. Max, you're on the air. Max is not on the air. Rick in Hendersonville. Let's see if we can salvage this. Hello, Rick.
Hey, Buck, I don't know about salvaging it. I just want to throw a statistic out there that I haven't heard anybody talk about, and I'm sure you'll be able to tell me exactly why nobody's talking about it.
Okay. Well, can I ask quickly, Rick, before you give us the statistic, where is the statistic from?
Well, it's basically Fortune 500.
Okay. Well, so this is coming from Fortune 500. I just want to know where it's coming from before we get into it.
Yeah, it's basically coming from Fortune 500.
Okay, go ahead.
Their statistic shows that African American coaches in the NFL, there is a higher percentage of African American coaches in the NFL than there are CEOs in the Fortune 500. You have 4 African American CEOs representing 500 companies. I mean, my viewpoint is with white billionaire owners, you're going to continue to see this. I mean, the Rooney Rule was, again, a great theory.
It didn't work. We have enough of a sample size to know that it didn't work. And Rick, I'm glad that you brought that statistic in. Thank you for the call, because I think that's exactly what we're looking at, right? It's not just sports. We're talking about workplaces all over the place. We'll get back into this conversation coming up next. In the meantime, we got to talk some football. We got to talk some football with Dave Lapham of the Bengals Radio Network, who joins us now. Dave, what's happening, man? How we living?
Hey, Buck, life can't be better. You know what I mean? It's been a long time. Bengals back in the Super Bowl. I can't believe they're going to Super Bowl 56.
Yeah, so, this has been quite some time. And, by the way, Dave, were you sweating at all, Dave, watching the NFC Championship game? Because, this is some eerie stuff that's going on. And had you guys faced the 49ers, this would have felt like some kind of cosmic alignment. Instead, you get the Rams. Were you sweating that out at all at the end of the NFC Championship game?
No, actually, that's what I wanted. I wanted the 49ers. I was thinking maybe the third time would be the charm. You know, it would be great to have the 49ers one more time and see what happens without Joe Montana at quarterback, because that sucker, man, we couldn't beat him. He's great. Well, it's
going to be Matt Stafford versus Joe Burrow. When last we talked, Dave, this was before the Titans played the Bengals. Now, since then, all Cincinnati has done is rolled through the postseason. They've taken out the number 1 and number 2 seed on their side of the bracket. I don't know if surprised is the right word to ask you, because you've been following this a lot closer than anybody here in Nashville, Tennessee has, obviously. But do you find yourself surprised at all that they got here this quickly with the way that the roster's constructed?
I think they exceeded expectations. I do think, from a roster standpoint, they're pretty darn good everywhere except the offensive line needs more work. It needs to be fine-tuned, and maybe fine-tuned is too less of a description. It still needs some work. But, at the skill positions, they're as good as anybody. They got a quarterback who's got an earned confidence, and he's playing at a very, very high level. he plays quarterback like a linebacker from a mentality standpoint. His dad was a longtime defensive coordinator. He played in Canada for a while in the secondary. He's got two brothers that played at Nebraska at linebacker. I mean, he asked up at Ohio State, he said to Urban Meyer, look, if you're not going to play me a quarterback, let me cover kickoffs. And he was serious.
Yeah.
He's a football player. He doesn't flinch. You know, he's not a quarterback. He's not a prima donna type quarterback. He's a football player that the team all responds to. There's no question. And he is certainly the straw that stirs the drink. But at receiver, they got a threesome at receiver that's as good as anybody in the league. Joe Mixon is as good as most in the league at the running back position. I mean, they got some talent in the offensive side, and you know they built their roster through free agency. On the defensive side of it, they have 7 new starters that came from winning teams like the Saints, the Steelers, and Ogunjobi, who's on the shelf now injured, but he came from Cleveland after they won a playoff game last year against Pittsburgh. So you know these guys have a winning mentality, and then offensively they did it through the draft. First pick of the draft, they got Joe Burrow. And then the 5th pick of the draft the following year got Jamar Chase, and they had T. Higgins in the draft before Joe Burrow to get him in a high draft pick. So they've done a good job. They've had high picks, unfortunately. But the good news is they put the bat on the ball with those picks, and they've kind of turned it around.
Bengals radio analyst Dave Lapham is our guest here on 104.5 The Zone. We're talking Super Bowl 56 between the L.A. Rams in Los Angeles hosting, well, I guess they're technically the home team, the Cincinnati Bengals,
right,
at SoFi Stadium. It's only the second Super Bowl with starting quarterbacks who were number 1 overall picks. Dave, with all this Miami Dolphins conversation and the lawsuit that's being alleged about the year that Stephen Ross wanted Brian Flores to tank, we all thought at the time that it was tanking for Tua, but in reading the reports, it seemed that Miami wanted Joe Burrow so badly and that they called Cincinnati on draft night. Bengals wouldn't even pick up the phone. It's so interesting to listen to Burrow be interviewed now. I watched his SportsCenter special with Jeff Darlington yesterday on ESPN, and he's saying, you know, it's so nice to be in a position where I know I'm the starting quarterback for all the reasons that you just laid out. To know that if I make a mistake in practice, I'll have the opportunity to improve upon it, to learn from it, as opposed to that being the thing that costs me my job. I found that fascinating from Joe Burrow.
Yeah, Joe Burrow learned a lot about himself, about football, going to Ohio State, and things not working out really well for him. He was a big-time player in a small high school program, went to Ohio State, a big program, and kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. Had an injury issue, and other quarterbacks passed him by because you know they had a lot of talent as well, and he kind of got lost there in the numbers. And he goes to LSU, and man, the rest is history. You know, he gets to show what he's about, and he's just this guy has he's a football savant. I mean, he has a football mind like no other. The amount of information that he can absorb during the course of the week from his assistant, the quarterback coach, the coordinator, and tape study himself is extraordinary. And then to be able to recall it instantly when it's needed on the football field in a situation separates him from a lot of guys. I mean, he's in the stratosphere with, you know, Brady and Manning and guys like that in terms of football IQ and football intellect. And plus he can play. You know, you have to be able to throw the football and make plays, and he can create and extend plays with his feet and legs. I mean, the kid is a total package. There's no question about it.
So this seems to be a pretty interesting matchup for Cincinnati in particular, Dave, because of what we've talked about with the offensive line. Obviously, we've seen that in Tennessee. To lose a playoff game where you sack the quarterback 9 times and probably should have been 11 is unthinkable, and yet that's exactly what the Cincinnati Bengals have done. I thought they held up better in protection in the AFC Championship game against a Kansas City defense that has been playing good football down the stretch. Now, though, they get Aaron Donald, they get Von Miller, the defense that seems so well equipped to take advantage of what this Bengals team does. What do you kind of see from that matchup up front?
Yeah, that's going to be deciding the football game. I think it always does. I think in the trenches where games are won and lost, and you're right, Joe was sacked 11 times. One was negated by timeout. One was negated by penalty.
Yeah.
But he threw for 348 yards.
Yeah.
You know, in the midst of that, and they made enough plays to win a football game. It was crazy. And then Kansas City had Jones in the interior. I mean, that dude is he's a freak. I mean, he's unbelievable in terms of the inside pressure that he can put on a quarterback, and that's where the pressure hurts, I think, is inside in the quarterback space. You need time and space. Quarterbacks need space. They need to be able to see the field so they can diagnose and dissect. And Aaron Donald is a guy that just wrecks you in the middle of the pass rush. I mean, I think he might be the best player in the NFL, never mind the best player at his position. And Von Miller has got more sacks than any active player in the National Football League. He was MVP of Super Bowl 50. So, I mean, he's got some skins in the wall. And then you put Floyd in there as well, another pass rusher with 9.5 sacks. I mean, these guys, you know, Tennessee had 3. I thought Tennessee's front was outstanding. I thought that, you know, that group was really, really good. I think that this group, the Rams group and Tennessee's group, in terms of putting pressure on the quarterback, are very similar. So what the Bengals are going to have to do is what they did against Kansas City. Quick game, get the ball out of Joe's hands in 2.5 seconds, run screens. They had a 41-yard touchdown. Samaje Perine on a screen pass. They're going to have to do that kind of thing, run some draws, get a little running game going where you can play action pass and not have to drop back and protect. You know, they have to think about the run first before they rush the passer and pin their ears back. They're going to have to do a lot of those kind of things, or it could get out of hand.
Dave Lapham, Bengals radio analyst, is our guest here on 104.5 The Zone. We're breaking down Super Bowl 56 right now. A lot of similarities between the way these two teams like to run their offense. A lot of empty sets for both Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford of the LA Rams. It's funny to look at those skill position players and the way that they got Odell Beckham Jr. for, you know, a bag of peanuts, basically. And he's catching a higher percentage of passes than Cooper Kupp, who is, of course, a fantastic player. But Odell Beckham Jr. is made so much better because of how big a threat Kupp is on the other side. How will Cincinnati have to attack this Rams defense, understanding that this is a very, very similar style of play?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking in a mirror. I mean, Zach Taylor, he came from Sean McVay's staff. I mean,
right.
he was in the Super Bowl with Sean McVay. They run a lot of the same concepts, a lot of the same formations, personnel, window dressing. I think which coach is going to be able to come up with the best wrinkles, as the great Paul Brown, my first head coach in the National Football League as a player, said. What we're going to try to do is make different things look the same, and the same things look different. And that's how we're going to win this football game. In other words, we're not going to create all these new plays and all that, but we're going to do our same base concepts, our structure of our offense. We're going to do it a little differently. You know, make them not trust their eyes quite as quickly. Try to get them to hesitate a step or things like that. I think those subtle nuances are going to be big in this football game, because you're right. It's going to be like looking in a mirror in terms of scheme and, you know, and mindset and philosophy and all those kind of things. And interestingly enough, the defense is a Vic Fangio style defense, because, you know, Staley was there with the Rams. They had great success. He goes to the Chargers. They keep that same scheme. The Bengals played the Chargers. They played Staley. Chicago has the same type of scheme. They played the Denver Broncos. So 3 times they prepared for the Vic Fangio type defense. So they feel like, you know, now they've got a little bit of an idea of things they want to run against that type of scheme. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup in terms of, you know, the X's and O's and what the coaches might be thinking. And, you know, Callahan, he coached Stafford in Detroit. The Bengals offensive coordinator was his quarterback coach in Detroit. So, you know, he knows a lot about him, what things that strengths, weaknesses, things he likes, things he doesn't like. And Zach Taylor has seen Sean McVay operate as a head coach, but Sean McVay has not seen Zach Taylor operate as a head coach. He's just seen him operate as a quarterback coach and assistant wide receiver coach. So there's a lot of things in the Super Bowl that are going to be very interesting. And finally, Andrew Whitworth played for both franchises,
yeah.
You know, 11 years with the Bengals and finishing up his career with the Rams. So Big Whit is a common denominator. There's a few storylines for sure.
Dave Lapham. Dave, enjoy the game. I'm looking forward to heading out there Tuesday night to L.A. and to see what happens between your Bengals and the Los Angeles Rams. Best of luck to your squad, and I hope you enjoy yourself.
Looking forward to it. I mean, you know, you can't take these for granted. Might be another 30 years before they get back. Who knows?
Nobody knows better than Dave Lapham. He's seen both sides of that. Dave, thanks so much for the time.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Dave Lapham of the Bengals Radio Network and longtime Bengals great. I mean, he was in those Super Bowls 30 years ago against the San Francisco 49ers. And now Joe Burrow will have the opportunity to kind of create a legacy unto himself. It's crazy to think about, right? the Bengals in my lifetime have never mattered. Just never mattered of any legitimate consequence. Like, I know Andy Dalton had one really, really good season, right? Where they had Marvin Jones, they had A.J. Green, they had, this was before Joe Mixon, I believe it was Jeremy Hill, the running back out of LSU, and Giovanni Bernard is their kind of two guys in a really, really solid offensive line. Like, they have made the playoffs, but they have never done, or at least in a long, long time, they haven't done anything like this. And it seems to be the first kind of chapter of a team that's going to be causing problems for the rest of the AFC for a long, long time. I know that I'm looking at this as somebody who covers what is supposed to be, and what is, by the way, another power in the AFC, in the Tennessee Titans, and thinking, okay, how far away are they from that, from Cincinnati? Just because Cincinnati's the one in it this year, right? Cincinnati, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Tennessee, right? Those are the four powers as we know them. You can probably interchange Cincy and Baltimore depending on the health of Lamar Jackson. And we'll see what happens with Justin Herbert in the future. The AFC has a lot of promise as far as the quarterback position is concerned. But I know when I watch this game on Sunday, how I'm going to be processing it, and how many of you are probably going to be processing it outside of all of the money that you're going to be making on your DraftKings Sportsbook apps, is, all right, how far away is the local professional football team from that? Because my answer has been, I mean, Tennessee had the best shot at them. Tennessee had the kill shot. You had that dude running for his life back there. You had him in the dirt 11 times, 9 that counted. You had him dead to rights, and you gave it back to him, right? Literally gave it back to him 3 times. So when you look at how far away are they? Well, they're not that far away, but in reality, they're 3 games away from the Super Bowl. Or 2 games away from the Super Bowl, because they didn't even make it out of their divisional round as the 1 seed. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like. We got a lot to talk about. Remember that Dennis Kelly, former Titans right tackle, is going to join us. Of course, the brother of Tim Kelly, who is now the passing game coordinator here in Tennessee. A lot of good stuff coming on this Monday. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back on this Monday. Really enjoyed our conversation with Dave Lapham. If you miss any of our interviews, and there's going to be a ton this week, kids, check out a podcast. It's the Buck Reising Show in your favorite podcast app. We're doing the co-sell pod a day early, so it's going to come your way on Tuesday afternoon ahead of Super Bowl 56 because Greg and we're both traveling to Super Bowl, so we wanted to make sure that we could get it done, and that will be available to you on Tuesday. But got to remind you that our Radio Row travel and everything that's going to come to you from Radio Row is presented by Ferguson HVAC, Two Rivers Ford, and A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. You can tune in every day with me and 3HL. We're broadcasting live from Radio Row. We're going to have tons of very special guests and hear exclusive interviews that you're just not going to get anywhere else. The Radio Row coverage is brought to you by Ferguson HVAC, quality products, exceptional service. Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa, Nashville's only full-service salon, day spa, and gift boutique located in Cool Springs. So we're going to interrupt your Super Bowl coverage just for a hot second to kind of close up some loose ends on a story that we were following on Friday. I don't know how many people, because college football, nobody's really paying attention to what's happening right now. I mean, we got through Jimbo Fisher taking shots at Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban and all these different things that are happening after National Signing Day because, it just doesn't hit the same when you've moved up the early signing period so far. But this thing at Auburn has been fascinating to follow, and I don't know how many people have kept track of it. Lucas, you've been obsessed with this story. Really, I feel like every time I talk to you, you've been trying to find out whether Brian Harsin has been fired or what kind of dysfunction is going on at Auburn University right now this week. And you've sent me a statement. Set this up for the people before I read the statement.
Well, Brian Harsin's been under fire in the last few days. Really, it hasn't even been a week, and it's been a bunch of factors, right? Players in the transfer portal, unsubstantiated off-field social media rumors, going 6-7 in year one. Pressure is mounted on him, but it was kind of almost set up staff turnover, obviously. But it feels like, in a way, it was set up like this from the start because of the way that the powers that be at Auburn were butting heads over hiring him out of Boise State in the first place. He was kind of saddled with some staff members that he eventually let go that are a part of that staff turnover.
Right.
So there's a lot of different sides to this, and it's just so fascinating how that's been the constant for Auburn. It feels like for the last few years, I don't really know if that was the case going into the Malzahn era, leaving the Chizik era. I feel like it had to be, but really in the last few years of being in this business and seeing these things shake out on the plains, it's fascinating to see how it carries over after year one of the Harsin era, and there doesn't seem to be anybody at the top that agrees on anything right now.
All right, quick follow-up. Are you required to say, is this the play-by-play gene in you that requires you to say the Plains anytime you bring up Auburn? Is that a requirement?
No, I don't think so.
I think it is. I think that's an inherent. Now, this is good, right? That means you got the trait. You're going to be a great play-by-play broadcaster because I've never heard anybody talk about Auburn from a broadcasting standpoint and not say the Plains. So I think you've got the gene.
That's fair, but that's what they're known as.
All right, very good. So here's the statement. The Auburn administration is judiciously collecting information from a variety of perspectives, including our student athletes, and moving swiftly to understand any issues in accordance with university policies and procedures. Decisions regarding the future of Auburn and its athletics program, as always, are made in the interest of our great university and in fairness to all concerned. We do not make institutional decisions based on social media posts or media headlines. Oh, no. They had to get out in front. Did they not basically just say in very much more refined university president terms, fake news is basically what they just said in the statement?
Yeah, when I hear that too, I hear we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, no, they are responding to social media pressure and media headlines. Otherwise, they would not be conducting. They have just done the thing that they should absolutely not do. They have said, we have seen your social media posts, we have read your media headlines, and now we are having to conduct an internal internal investigation, basically, to figure out what the hell is going on and why you know so much more about it than we do.
Well, that's what's fascinating about this whole thing. Like, where is most of the pressure coming from? Is it coming from the fact that players were putting out on social media on their way out into the portal that Brian Harsin mistreated us in there? There have been some players that have backed up their head coach on social media since then.
Yep.
Is it coming from the boosters that never wanted him there in the first place? Is it coming from people maybe circulating rumors about Brian Harsin off the field? Like,
Sliced bread.
There's a few different, yes. At the end of all this, it's going to be sliced bread. Like Scooby-Doo, unveil the mask, and it's sliced bread.
Look at you. You're breathless about this.
I can't figure out where most of the pressure is coming from. There's so many different angles right now. Meanwhile, Brian Harson's just trying to enjoy his vacation.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. Sorry, bud.
Poor guy.
It's like Tom Brady being, quote, unquote, out of the country while Adam Schefter and Jeff Darlington are breaking the news that he's retiring before he gets the opportunity to do it. Like, nah, that's not how this works, bud.
I mean, this is dysfunction to its core, right? Like in Tennessee, the dysfunction, I feel like over the years has come from incompetence. This feels like dysfunction over too many voices in the room, right?
You can interact with the show on Zone TV via YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, Twitch. However you want to get in touch with us, you can do that. Brandon Rushing writes in on the YouTube chat, they're currently looking for anything, they, being Auburn, is currently looking for anything to Pruitt him. Vols gave them the blueprint.
Right.
So how long until Brian Harsin is accused of hiding cash in McDonald's bags?
Well, Justin Hawkinson of On3 Sports told us Friday there's a push to fire Harsin with cause. What that cause is, I don't think anybody has
the
a
cause
clue.
is on a message board. Does the NFL have an equivalent to college football message boards? I don't think there really
know. No, because it's not as much college football, these fan bases, I think it's a much more intimate, you know what I mean, atmosphere.
Yeah.
They're much closer to the program, but I mean, it's like The Office, the scene from The Office. It is because we don't like him as our coach, right? It's because we want to fire him. That is the cause. There's nothing else, nothing substantial.
Jay on YouTube just writes sexual misconduct.
It's a thing. Nobody knows exactly why he would be fired, but they're certainly pushed to get. And then they're going to, if they fire him, whoever they bring in next, it's going to be kind of the same old song and dance because there's going to be disagreements about who to hire. And then when they hire him, disagreements about keeping him. And it just feels like a never-ending story with this program.
Yeah, well, and again, the more salacious details of this are, of course, the ones that have not been verified by anything credible, other than sliced bread running around out there saying Brian Harsin is having an affair with an assistant. Allegedly, there has been no proof to that at this point. Posting,
no word yet if sliced bread is behind this.
Sliced bread is the root of all evil. Just ask Jimbo Fisher. That and unnamed Notre Dame athletic administrators who are retweeting sliced bread. Because that's where we are in the noble history, esteemed sport of college football, or at least all y'all thought it was.
No, this is why college football is fantastic.
College football is gross.
Because of the impact sliced bread can have ripple effects across the SEC.
It's so good. All right, that will conclude our Brian Harsin Fire Watch update.
Hey, I called my shot on Blaine and Mickey Friday that he wouldn't last a week. So
what you are actively rooting for chaos in all of this.
Well, part of me is, but that's what makes college football great. I don't want anyone to lose their job.
No. You started out with a lie. You can't. Anything that comes before the but doesn't matter. I don't want anybody to lose their job, but if I can get at some entertainment out of sliced bread and Auburn football message boards, just write it into the sun.
Love this sport.
You're sick. When we come back, we're going to talk about, you know what? Let's talk about offseason stuff. Because there's a clip going viral about the Tennessee Titans and Aaron Rodgers. Not the one that you think it is, but a new one that I want to talk about coming up next. And the question that I'm going to pose to you, because it's the offseason for 30 NFL teams right now as we get closer and closer to Super Bowl 56. The question that I'm posing to you is this. What is your least favorite part of the NFL offseason? Because in college football, you got spice. In the NFL, it's just stupid. We'll talk about that coming up next. 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Reising. It's 1045 The Zone.
It is 12:03. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica, and welcome to Super Bowl week. 104.5 The Zone is going on the road to Radio Row in Los Angeles, thanks to Ferguson HVAC, Two Rivers Ford, and A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Tune in every day as the Buck Reising Show and 3HL will broadcast live from Radio Row in LA starting on Wednesday. Final open head coaching positions in the NFL are filling up. The Miami Dolphins have hired San Francisco offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel. The 38-year-old has been on staff under Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers since 2017. And meanwhile, the Houston Texans in talks with Lovie Smith to become their next head coach, according to multiple reports. A deal expected to be announced soon, according to Mike Garofalo. Smith spent the 2021 season as the Texans' associate head coach and defensive coordinator under David Culley. That would leave only one job open across the league, the New Orleans Saints. College basketball, Tennessee moved up to number 19 in the AP poll after 2 wins this week against Texas A&M and South Carolina. Tennessee freshman Zakai Ziegler was named the SEC Freshman of the Week after strong performances in both of those games. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour. Welcome in on this Monday, or welcome back if you've been with us this morning. Happy to have you guys along for the ride. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. Dennis Kelly, brother of Tim, former Titans right tackle, is going to join us here in just about 15 minutes. So we're looking forward to catching up with The Undertaker momentarily. Got a lot of things to talk about, in part because not only is Dennis Tim's brother, and Tim will soon be a part officially of the Tennessee Titans coaching staff, but Dennis was protecting the right side of Aaron Rodgers this past season in Green Bay. Dennis is now an unrestricted free agent, so perhaps we will see if Dennis won't break some Aaron Rodgers to the Titans news, since that's all anybody seems to want to do today. It's driving me crazy. And because this thing I can't get rid of it. I can't shake it. I can't run from it. I can't hide from it. It just hovers over everything like a bad smell this offseason, and I'm sick of it already. It's making me hate the offseason more than I already hate the offseason. Not just because there's soon going to be no more football, or there will be football, but lesser football that I'm not interested in. Not only because coaching searches are coming to an end. Those are always crazy and entertaining, this year in particular. Not just because we've already passed the Tom Brady retirement portion of the proceedings, or all those things, but now it's just draft talk. Draft is fine, but, you're having the same conversation for basically 4 months. And then reckless speculation, which is where the Aaron Rodgers portion of the conversation comes in. There's a video clip that Lucas and I keep getting tagged in, and it comes this morning from First Take. Now, I have First Take on. I have ESPN in the studio every day when I'm in here. Right now, Mina Kimes, our friend, is breaking down the Mike McDaniel Dolphins head coaching hire. But earlier, it was Stephen A. Smith basically calling the Tennessee Titans a national embarrassment. And here's why. This was Stephen A. making the case to Michael Irvin of the NFL Network and Dan Orlovsky of NFL Live as to why he thinks the Tennessee Titans should make a move this offseason.
Hey, what I would say to y'all is I don't give a damn what Robinson, the GM, said. Why don't you tell the people in Nashville, Tennessee, one of my favorite places to visit from time to time, why don't you tell them we have a chance to get Aaron Rodgers, but we're going to stick with Ryan Tannehill? Why don't you say that publicly? Why don't you say that? Now, you can say that when there's no obvious chance to get Aaron Rodgers. But if somehow, some way there was a chance to get him, if Green Bay said, hey, if Aaron Rodgers said, I wouldn't mind coming to Nashville, Tennessee, by the way, a state with no state income taxes, excuse me, I wouldn't mind going there. If Aaron Rodgers made that claim, if he put that out there, and you knew it's Tennessee with the first of all, it ain't just Derrick Henry. Have you seen Foreman run with that football? Have you seen Hilliard run with that football? Their running game didn't dissipate dramatically, Dan, once Derrick Henry went down. The mic, it didn't happen.
Oh
you got A.J. Brown. I mean, has anybody seen this? Listen, I'm telling y'all, has anybody seen this man? Has anybody seen this brother A.J. Brown play? Now think about this, y'all. You got A.J. Brown. You got Julio Jones, even though he only played 10 games, he missed 6. You got some other pieces there, and you got that running game, and not one single receiver had over 1,000 yards receiving. Yeah. Not one of them, okay? Think about that for a second. And we saw, and then to top it all up, not only did Tannehill throw his interception, how the hell you gonna throw the interception on the first play of the game? I mean, everybody out there with the tailgate parties, partying, looking forward to talking to Dan Orlovsky and Pleather Mike and all of this. And what happens? Okay, he throws an interception before you had a chance to pass gas. I mean, damn. The point that I'm trying to make to y'all is that, look, if you the Tennessee Titans, with Vrabel as the coach, with that defense showing up with as capable as it is, with the three-headed monster at the running back spot, with guys like A.J. Brown up in there, if Aaron Rodgers was on the Tennessee Titans, I don't think we'd see Cincinnati in the Super Bowl. I think we'd see the Tennessee Titans.
Okay.
That's Stephen A. Smith on First Take this morning. Do you think he knows? Do you think he knows Robinson or Foreman or Henry or Hilliard? Do you think he knows any of their first names?
I was going to say, I don't think he knew any of their last names until probably whoever told him those names.
Well, he's got the sheet in front of him, right? He's got the ESPN stats and info sheet.
If he had to guess Ryan Tannehill's cap hit next year, I wonder what he would say.
I love Stephen A. Smith so much
because he doesn't know it.
No, he's a cartoon character. Nobody is better though at saying things into microphones or television cameras than Stephen A. He's worth every. I think Stephen A'd making athlete money now. Stephen A. pulling in $11 million a year.
Right, he's the highest form of entertainment there is on sports media.
It's tremendous. All that being said, so I keep getting tagged in this clip. I keep getting tagged in this Aaron Rodgers to the Titans clip. Did anybody read Teron Davenport on Friday? Because I talked to TD. Not just the podcast, because he got a podcast called Talking with TD, but I talked to Teron on Friday after I got home from the Senior Bowl. And Teron and I hope I'm not betraying any confidences by saying this, but Teron was like, basically, yeah, this whole Rodgers thing, they're going to have me track down some info on Aaron Rodgers, because instead of, sending Teron to the Super Bowl, because that's way more productive use of Teron's time, not just because he understands the game better than any of us, as a former player, and breaking down these draft prospects and talking to draft picks and substantive stuff, right? No. ESPN wants Teron covering the Packers because the Packers and Green Bay are more clickable than a sit down with John Robinson like the rest of us did at the Senior Bowl, right? So that's what Teron's going to track down. And so Teron gets this article done on Friday, and it's basically putting a fork in the speculation about Rodgers to the Titans, because that's all it is. It's nothing. It's not a story. It's an NFL story that Aaron Rodgers, because of the fame and because of the position and because of the team, it's a story that NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers is building a home in Nashville, Tennessee. Totally admit it's a story. There is no story about the Titans and Aaron Rodgers just because he's building a house here. I don't know how many times I got to say that. But then Teron talks to people in the Titans organization, just as all of us have done, and he puts it in print on ESPN.com so he can be done with the situation, right? Ryan's our quarterback. Ryan is our quarterback. He's made a lot of plays for us. He's a great leader. He's extremely tough. Love what Ryan brings to our football team. Love what he stands for. Rodgers is reportedly open to playing for the Titans, but if the Titans were to obtain Rodgers, it would have to be through trade. And what the Titans are saying privately, internally, is that no, enough of this. I'm paraphrasing. Enough of this. It's got nothing to do with the Titans just because he's got property here. Got nothing to do with it whatsoever. So enough of this conversation. Your Aaron Rodgers move is Tim Kelly. Tim Kelly is the passing game coordinator. That's your Aaron Rodgers. Does that titillate you the same way that Aaron Rodgers to the Titans, ? We discuss next, does? Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. I know how this works. I work in this business, all right? I'm the person who finds different ways to piss people off, so you'll call me and yell about it. That's it's part of my job. And it makes for compelling sports talk radio. I'm very, very well aware of that. But also it drives me crazy because it's a waste of time. You know, I know that I talk for basically 5 hours a day live between radio and the primetime show. All right? I know that I have a lot of time to talk, and there's a lot of different things that I can talk about. But even so, I don't want to waste my time or waste your time with stuff that's just gaslighting you. When it is not grounded in any shred of reality. That's what pisses me off the most about the offseason. So we're going to talk about where we can be grounded in reality with former Titans right tackle Dennis Kelly. His brother is now coming here, the former Texans OC, to be the Titans passing game coordinator. He also protected Aaron Rodgers last year. So if you want, I'll ask Dennis a Rodgers question for you, then we can shut the hell up about this. I'm sick of it. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like. Dennis Kelly joins us coming up next. It's an eerie vibe here on 104.5 The Zone. What am I listening to right now? It feels like something's rising from the dead, from the beyond.
I think that's the Undertaker's music.
Is that Is that in fact the Undertaker's music? Well, then it's good that I see in front of me on the Zoom call, and if you're watching with us on Zone TV, it's good that I see the Undertaker. I see Dennis Kelly, former Titans right tackle, former Green Bay Packers right tackle, now unrestricted free agent. Hire him, all of you NFL teams that are listening. Dennis joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. You look great, bud.
Look, I appreciate it, man. You know, unfortunately, it just hit me right now, the colors I'm wearing, which isn't ideal, but thanks for having me, bud. These are always fun.
Yeah, no, it's always good to catch up. So we were just talking about this. You and I are in, it's not parallel situations, but we are in similar situations. Both of us, in some form or fashion, had our football seasons ended in the divisional round after both of us were, at least in my case, loosely tied to a number one overall seed. What has that been like on your end? Because I know what the hell it looks like here.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a different feeling, a crappy feeling. People ask, with the conference championship games, who do you want to win? And my answer was no one, because we were hoping to be beating all of those teams.
Yeah.
So, like I said to you, like, kind of ready for the Super Bowl to be over, so I don't have to kind of keep looking at these games, especially since we beat both the teams in the Super Bowl this year. It's definitely a very weird, unique feeling.
So you don't even hate watch. You're just like, the hell with it. I'm done. I'm done for the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'll watch them, at least. Like the conference championship games, like, they were entertaining, so like I appreciated that part of it. But it is kind of like I'm just watching the football without cheering, which I guess is always kind of, because I've always at least kind of picked someone to kind of cheer for. But this one, it's just going to kind of be staring at the screen blankly.
I have a sad visual of Dennis Kelly and every other eliminated football player, just dark room, nobody's around them, no snacks, no Super Bowl party, just sitting in front of the screen watching, expressionless with anything that happens. No, that's
exactly.
It sounds like a terrible way to go through this. So on the brighter side of things, your brother is coming down here. He's got a job as the Titans passing game coordinator. It's very exciting stuff. That's a big deal for a variety of different reasons, Dennis. You've never obviously played for your brother, but you are, you know a lot about him. What can Titans fans expect from what they're getting in Tim Kelly?
Honestly, I'd like to say I've molded a lot of my professionalism off of what I thought he would do. I always kind of saw him as a role model. And so I would say if you liked what I brought, I think you're going to get a very similar vibe with him.
What a self-involved way to give that analysis. Bravo by you.
Someone that's going to obviously work really hard, very passionate. Is going to love being around the guys, and I think really fits the culture there with the Titans.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. And to see kind of the work that he's done over the course of the last couple of years in Houston, Dennis, obviously he's had talent at times, but I think the more impressive thing is what he's done. See, I mean, having the Texans beat the Titans here in Nashville this year, with respectfully to those players on the Texans roster, they're just out there with a bunch of dudes trying to win football games. I thought that his best coaching jobs have been done in the last 2 years when they haven't had a ton of success on the field from a wins-loss perspective.
Right, and we had talked about that to where, obviously when he had Deshaun playing for him, like you said, that you have some talent there. You had Hop as a receiver. You can kind of almost use it as a crutch where, you take those away, and now it's on you, Tim. Now you kind of have to find a way to make these players work. And I'm glad it seemed to have worked out for him a little bit.
Dennis Kelly, former Titans right tackle, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're talking about Tim Kelly's addition to the Titans coaching staff, and then maybe I'll lob some Aaron Rodgers rumors at Dennis and see if I can't go full TMZ on him later on in the show. With that being said, Dennis, not every team has a passing game coordinator. I don't know. Is that something that you have worked under before in previous stops? Because that's a new addition to the Titans staff under Vrabel. And if so, how beneficial can that be when you're trying to not spread your staff too thin?
Yeah, I think I believe my first experience with it was this year, because I believe the Packers had a passing game coordinator. The way their structure was, I really didn't notice.
Yeah.
But I do think it does kind of help. Like you said, it doesn't spread the staff too thin. It kind of helps guys, everything. We have unlimited resources essentially in the NFL, and I'm kind of surprised we don't have more of these, where guys are just, this is your area of expertise. Find your ways. Find, kind of go digging. Find what works and why it works. And so I do think it's. I'm interested to see if it continues to grow, because I saw some list maybe this past weekend about, teams that had passing game coordinators this year. And I want to say majority of them had a relatively good passing offense, or an offense as a whole. So yeah, it will be interesting to see if that kind of becomes a new development in the NFL.
Now, your game in the divisional round was on Sunday. Did you watch the Titans-Bengals game?
We were right after the Titans-Bengals.
Then I'm an idiot, because that makes that that's correct, because the Chiefs and the Bills was the other game. So let me shut the hell up. Titans right tackle Dennis Kelly here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Dennis, the way that it's being talked about here is that basically there's a lot of different things about that offense that people consider to be broken. And we work in different industries, even though our industry is largely the same. But when people hammer something that goes wrong in one football game, and they cast a blanket over the entirety of the season. Now there can be some truths in that, but as a player, how much does that frustrate you when you're being hammered for the result of one game, even understanding that game may be the last game of your season, but people are making it a conversation that's much larger than it needs to actually be?
Yeah, I think you said it best. It's a little frustrating, because you can't really come out and defend yourself, because then you kind of come off as bitter, or come off as, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. It's the term revisionist history kind of comes up, where it's like you forget an entire good season, and then the most recent thing you see or remember is how you feel about them. This is your truth, and it's like, you can have a bad game and still be a good football player. And I think everyone is so quick to jump to these, the hot takes or their strong opinions. It's like, not everything has to be this groundbreaking conclusion of a story. Sometimes, it just wasn't their day.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I have bad shows all the time. I don't think that makes me bad at my job, but I'm very, very cognizant of when I have a bad show, although many people listening to this would vehemently disagree with me about how good or how bad I am at my job. We've got a YouTube chat, Zone TV chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. People are there's a vast majority of calls saying, "Come home, Dennis," and there are others who are asking which Kelly brother has the better choke slam. Would you care to answer that question?
The choke slam, it's going to have to be me. I mean, he's older. He's not technically fatter, but I'm in better shape. I'm bigger. I'm more athletic. Definitely better looking. So it just, everything really just points towards me.
I can confirm all of those things. I think the flow gives you an aesthetic that Tim does not quite have. Dennis Kelly here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So with everything that we've talked about, Dennis, one, you're an unrestricted free agent. I'm going to ask you this, even though we've already talked about this. Would you have any interest in coming back here? Oh, it froze. It froze at the perfect time. Oh, no, he's gone robot voice on us.
Way last year's offseason, thought I had a decent gauge on how people were valued. But it's a whole, obviously last year throughout the league with the COVID cap and all that, teams are acting, a little different. And so I'm just not really sure how this offseason is going to go. I think I played relatively well when I got a chance this season. Showed that I can also pass block in a more of a pass heavy offense. It'll be really interesting to see how it goes. Going into year 11.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I kind of understand where that, more or less pigeonhole. I know what I bring to the table.
Dennis, you went robot voice on me like 6 times during the middle of that, so you could have said double middle fingers to the Tennessee Titans, and none of us would have known. It was tremendous. Dennis Kelly here with us on 104.5 The Zone. I don't know how much of this, Dennis, you're hearing, or if you've got robot voice.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit.
Yeah, there it is. All right, Lucas. Why don't we drop Dennis really quick, and then maybe we can bring him back into the middle of the things if Dennis wants to jump out of the Zoom and come back in. Since we're getting a little bit of robot voice, I think we'll do that and see if we can't reconvene here on 104.5 The Zone, because it looks like there's a little bit of a delay. I have no idea what he said about the situation, and we will continue this conversation. He's smiling at me right now. I think he has no idea what's happening. I'm going to text him. But here's the thing about the situation for passing game coordinators in the NFL, right? This is something that you're just looking to diversify your portfolio as far as your passing attack is concerned. And I think that bodes well for a team that needs a little bit of versatility in the passing game, which is exactly what Dennis's brother, Tim, is going to bring to this coaching staff. 615-737-1045 is the number. Dennis, can you hear me okay? You're nodding along. I can't tell whether you're.
Yeah, it seems to have cleared up a little bit.
Okay, we're riding out the issues. What's your least favorite part of the offseason? Just other than not ending up in the Super Bowl. Like, is there a part of the offseason that drives you crazy? Froze again. All right, I'm gonna text him. Let's go ahead and Dennis, jump out of the Zoom and then jump back in, and we'll see if we can't salvage this. I'll take a phone call in the meantime. We got Drew in Hendersonville up next between Robot, Dennis Kelly, and everything else that's happening. Hello, Drew.
Hey, Buck. How's it going, man? I enjoy listening to that robot talk with Dennis Kelly.
He could have said double middle fingers, John Robinson, and none of us would have known, Drew. I'm pissed about it.
He could have said, I never want to be back in Tennessee again. I hated it, and we never would have just known. That was so funny.
Unreal.
But I wanted to give, just a quick opinion on what you think, Buck. I obviously think John Robinson, he would never say publicly that we were talking with Matt LaFleur, just a Packers GM and just Packers in general, about getting Aaron Rodgers, because, if that deal didn't fall through, I feel like, that'd be like, that would make Ryan Tannehill feel like that he doesn't have confidence, or that the Titans don't have confidence anymore. That would just be a huge morale check for them in a sense. So I just want to think, do you think he's saying this right now? And do you think that there is a secret, I wouldn't say like secret meeting, but like something like that going on with the Packers, that they're talking, seeing if they can't find something with Aaron Rodgers?
I want to be fair. I want to be fair, Drew, right? Because to say that they've completely discounted the Aaron Rodgers situation would be flawed, right? Of course, every conversation is being had about all the potential ways to make the football team better. That's, at this point, kind of where they are in the process. Now, you have to on one hand consider what is realistic, what is probable, and what are all these different variations of things. Dennis, I've been going crazy here because Aaron Rodgers is building a house in Nashville, and all of a sudden people think that that's going to be quarterback run. You want to break any news? Is Aaron going to play for the Titans next year? You want to go TMZ?
You guys know as much as I do about that.
What's your least favorite part of the offseason? Because this Aaron Rodgers thing, I can't cuss on the radio, but if I could, I would say many bad words right now.
That's fair. There's definitely a downtime in that offseason when people just almost go reaching for something to create. And I get it. You have shows you got to put on. You got to talk about something. But the whole, with the coaching search, with the flight trackers in the college game, or, how could, this player change this? There are certain players that can help. They're free agents, that works out. But how often does all of this, let's use this quarterback drama talk, how often does something actually ever happen?
Almost next to never.
Look at last offseason. Every quarterback that there was quote unquote drama with stayed at the same team. Did he not?
Everybody but Carson Wentz. But yeah, basically, there was not a lot of movement.
Right. So it's like, again, it just seems like it's the same story, different chapter.
All right, so I want you to hear a chapter of what my daily life is like, because we get calls. We love our callers. Mm-hmm. They are of national renown. People talk about the callers that we get all over the place for all the guests who are kind enough to give us their time. And I get calls like this, which didn't happen on my show, but happened this morning, Dennis, about the calling for the firing of a Titans offensive coordinator. So, Lucas, why don't you set this up for Dennis Kelly in the audience?
Yeah, a call this morning on J. Martin Ramon discussing issues within the Titans offense, Ryan Tannehill, and play calling. He wants one certain member of the Titans staff gone. He wants it yesterday.
Okay, go ahead and set that up.
Mitchell in Nashville. Mitchell, what's up?
What's up, Mitch?
Hey, how's it going, fellas?
Good morning.
Morning. Hey, I just want to talk about this Tannehill thing. Tannehill, when we signed him for the big contract of 3 years or whatever it was, I wasn't a big fan of that, but then when we got Dow Loggins or whatever his name is, that's Tannehill's problem this year. That dude needs to go. He's so predictable, runs every first down just about. I mean, if I know what they're going to do, I know that a linebacker knows what they're going to do.
All right, so
you see what I'm saying?
Fade it down. Enough of this. Enough of Mitch or in wherever the hell. So he said that Dowell Loggins needs, not Todd Downing, but Dowell Loggins. Lucas Panzica, can you tell me the last time that Dowell Loggins was a member of a Tennessee Titans coaching staff?
That would be 2013 as the offensive coordinator.
Yes. So this is how I spend my time in the offseason, Dennis. I'm in need of a self-help line. I'm in need, not quite suicide watch, but this is what I'm going to spend basically the next 8 months doing.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of fun conversations ahead of you, and I really envy you for all that.
Well,
I thought he said the Dow Loggins. I was like, did I miss something here? Did I miss them hiring someone? But yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
No, you miss the idea that people, when you teeter on frustration with people who may not have all the information but are coming at your neck anyway. This is what it is. This is our lives, Dennis. This is what we have signed up
Dow
for.
Loggins is the current tight ends coach at Arkansas, so maybe the caller thought that this was an Arkansas radio station and that Ryan Tannehill actually plays quarterback for the Razorbacks.
No. You are not here to defend the stupidity. We are not doing that today. Dennis Kelly has been our guest here on 104.5 The Zone. Careful, if you get bored this offseason, I'm going to call you more often and we'll hang out.
Let's do it.
All right.
This is fun. Like I said, always.
Always a pleasure, buddy. Take care.
Thanks, Buck. Have a good one, Buck.
Dennis Kelly, former Titans right tackle, brother of Tim Kelly, who will join the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator or offensive staff as a passing game coordinator. Some good insight on how Dennis has kind of modeled his career in the NFL off of his brother, who is, of course, older and has been in the league as long as Dennis at this point in a different capacity. 615-737-1045. It's the last call for phone calls. We got poll questions as well that we have to update. Meanwhile, we got people in the YouTube chat saying the Arkansas Razorbacks have a better quarterback than the Tennessee Titans. Come on. You people. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Hey, man. Brent Doherty and Ron Slay and Don Davenport, they're not on till 3. But Brent, I don't know why Brent's already here. But for reasons that I cannot discuss on air, I got to say I love that man. I'm looking forward to going out to L.A. with that crew. I love everybody here, all my teammates, even if they may not love me all of the time. Shout out Dawn. But we have a great time, and we're going to do it in Los Angeles starting on Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, broadcasting live from Radio Row. Hope you guys can hang out with us. It's going to be a good time. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. We got some polls to update as well. I got cousin Danny of the borough, not in the borough, but of the borough, who writes on YouTube, worst interview analysis that I've heard in a while. Absolute garbage from Buck of my Dennis Kelly interview. Interesting. I'm not certain. Was I bad during that interview other than the robot voice? I'm totally down to be self-reflective.
It's not about if you were bad. The point is not for you to be good or bad during the interview. It's about getting somebody else's perspective. And we got the perspective of a current offensive tackle in the NFL who's very familiar with the franchise he used to play for that his brother just got hired to coach at.
Well, I'll do better next time, Danny. Whatever makes you happy, bud. Jason in Hendersonville is up next. Hello, Jason.
Let's just pump the brakes and be a little bit more reasonable. Let's look back when Tannehill was good. He likes to throw between the numbers. He needs a big tight end. Let's stop worrying about the other quarterbacks. Yeah, Tannehill made some mistakes, but he's also half of the reason why we're where we're at. So let's shore up the right side of that offensive line. I mean, you've got that Neal kid coming out of Alabama who's, 6'7", 350 pounds, and you've got several great tight ends coming out of this draft, McBride and Weidelmeyer. I hope I said that correctly. I mean, are they going to be there, and would you expect the Titans to really pursue those two positions and these guys that I've mentioned if they're there at our first-round draft?
Thanks for the call, Jason. Evan Neal's going to be the top pick in the draft this year.
Unless it's traded. Yeah, he's going to be a candidate.
He's the offensive lineman from the left tackle from Alabama that he just brought up. So, no, I do not expect him to be there at 26. Now, I think there's a bunch of tight ends out there that are great. I think you can get a tight end in this draft at some point. I don't know that any of them are outright, clear and obvious first-round draft picks. Now, it's important to note that you, of course, don't have a second-round draft pick because of Julio Jones. So you have to be judicious whether you're going to overdraft or whether you're comfortable enough trading back and getting into a spot where you can pick up picks and get a tight end. But, yeah, tight end and offensive line are, of course, going to be prioritized at this point. I've talked a lot about different prospects, whether it be Trey McBride or Jeremy Ruckert at the tight end position, Cole Strange along the offensive line, Dylan Parham. We've spent a lot of time, and there will be plenty of time to go through draft picks or draft prospects in greater detail. But apparently, in the middle of this, we have breaking Tennessee news as it relates to the basketball team, yes?
Yeah, multiple Tennessee beat writers on social media right now saying Tennessee forward Olivier Cumwa's ankle injury is going to require surgery and that Tennessee does not expect him back this season.
That's unfortunate.
That's a big loss.
That's a significant loss for the Vols men's hoops, unfortunately. So very, very sorry to hear about that, and I hope his rehabilitation process and the surgery go well because he's a fun player to watch for the Vols this year. But with all that being said, yeah, there will be tight ends and there will be offensive linemen drafted this year. That I can assure you. There's almost nothing guaranteed in football, and it was surprising to see John Robinson not take a tight end last year or not take a wide receiver higher last year. So, I mean, I can't guarantee you when they'll take these guys because you have to see how the draft board is going to play out. There's some pretty interesting tight ends in free agency, by the way. But again, it's about how close do you want to get with your money when you're already kind of up against it. Polls.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's the segment where bias takes over and nuance goes to die. Now, here's your favorite Buck Reising Show correspondent, Lucas Pan Make that poll Zika.
By the way, the polls are now brought to you by our friends at Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. Many thanks to Two Rivers Ford for sponsoring one of our favorite segments each and every day.
And it starts with what did you watch more of this weekend? Hoops, Pro Bowl, Olympics, or golf? 42% say hoops, 25% watch the Olympics, 15% Pro Bowl, 18% golf. Dawson says none of the above. NASCAR and the LA Coliseum, which was a pretty cool scene.
I watched a lot more of that than I expected to do, and I'll plead ignorance. I know nothing about NASCAR other than I used to do an endorsement for a grooming products company that now sponsors Tyler Reddick's car. Other than that, I have zero. I don't pay attention to racing that way. But man, was that a cool sight, and to watch a few laps of that. Really, really enjoyed it. I did. Of all of those things, I ended up watching more of the Pro Bowl, though, which speaks to what kind of sick individual I am.
What is your least favorite part of the offseason? Eldon says it's baseball becoming the only prevalent sport in June and July. Andrew says it's that time between the draft and training camp where we get those filler segments and shows. Very mind-numbing.
Excuse you, Tennessee Geography Bee is not filler. That is a dedicated. We're going to do that again this year, right?
Yes, we got to do that again. There will be plenty of towns that we can use that we did not use this past time. Goody says mock drafts.
Yeah, well, we do a whole thing called Mock Draft Monday. But I don't know. I think that's productive for people to learn about these guys at some point.
Alan says Madden trade scenarios, and George adds on to that, saying people suggesting insane moves that will never and should never happen.
Yes, we are currently in that portion of the offseason as I bang my head against the table.
Are you satisfied if Tim Kelly is the move to help the Titans offense? 71% say yes.
I am in the 71%. I think, they need draft picks. They could use a little juice in free agency. There will be roster cuts. There will be offensive linemen that leave and are added. There will be tight ends that are added as well. So there will be more moves. But for what their biggest issue was, I would say that they have done well to address their biggest issue.
And was 2021 Ryan Tannehill's Kevin Byard year? 66% vote yes, more than likely out of hope.
I'm going to talk about that in more detail tomorrow. We didn't have all that much time to get to it, but it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow on the show. Before we leave for Super Bowl 56, you missed any of the fun interviews, check them out. Or if you want to get ready for them, you can subscribe to the podcast. In the meantime, talk to you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Blaine and Mickey got you covered the rest of the way.